Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Real Talk with Ryan Madrid. Thank you to VIP Mortgage for allowing us to have our podcast in this awesome space here. And thank you to Trey for helping us get this thing rolling today because we had a little bit of technical difficulties. But he's a podcast engineer, so it works out quite nicely.
Thank God for Trey.
Yeah, and that was Trisha Madrid over there. She's related to me as well. She is the podcast producer, and she does many other things for the Crawford team here at VIP Mortgage. So thank you to you two. Today, well, let me get back into this real quick here. So we are a podcast, but we're not a podcast just for real estate. We are a podcast for entrepreneurs, a podcast for people doing really cool things in Arizona, and just people that we know that do really cool things. So it's not just about the title and mortgage and realtors. So that being said, we do have a guest here today who's not into any of those categories.
Does none of those things.
But he is an entrepreneur. And so this guy kind of helped me in my business right when I was getting started in 2013, struggling along trying to figure out how to get realtors to give me business and to build relationships, basically. So somebody here at VIP Mortgage was actually a member in a chapter, and I won't tell you of what yet, and he was leaving. So it was an opportunity where there's going to be an opening, and it was the chapter that was over there at, not Orange Tree, what's the place over by?
Stone Creek
Golf Course. Met on Tuesday mornings or something?
7 a.m. 7 a.m. Still does.
Yep. So anyways, that didn't work out. So this person and I decided he was going to help me build my own chapter of BNI, Business Networking International. So we have Nate Dominguez here, the owner of BNI for this region, correct?
Yes, for Arizona.
Nate and his wife, Kelly. Correct?
True story, yes,
True
sir.
story. So, Nate, before we get into this isn't about BNI, as we know this, but we're going to talk a lot about what you do in there. Let's just dig a little bit back into your history, and so everybody knows who you are, where you came from. So, you're from Scottsdale.
Grew up in the Valley here in Scottsdale. Originally born in Denver, Colorado. Family moved here when I was 7. After several generations that were done with cold weather. My parents say they picked 2 places on the map. Weren't sure where they were going to move to. It was Phoenix or San Antonio, Texas, which I've never been to. I hear it's a great place. But the story goes, speaking of real estate, this was in the mid-'80s, that the realtor that got back with them first was here from Phoenix, came and looked at a few houses, made an offer, and we moved a few months later, and I've been here ever since.
There you go. And you went to Horizon High School?
Proud Horizon Husky, yes, sir. And
then on to Northern Arizona University, Lumberjack.
Go Jacks.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit about your wife, because this is a fun story. So I'm going to tell it because you've told it to me so many times. I'm going to tell you can come correct me. So Nate and his wife were friends in high school. Neither one of them had a date to prom. So a teacher that knew them both said, you guys should go together because neither of you have a date. So they went together, and they've been together ever since.
Aww.
Mrs. Haugen. Shout out to Mrs. Stephanie Haugen.
Horizon High School.
I think she's still teaching somewhere in the Valley.
Yeah. So this is what's crazy. So then they decided to go to NAU together and be roommates.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All
Who does that?
4 adventurous
And they took
years.
all the same classes. Who does that? And they're still together.
Wow.
22
No
years
way
later.
she likes you still.
It's better to be lucky than good.
This is the best story. She's really smart.
Yes, she is.
Nate is kind of smart.
Yes, I am.
So Kelly took all the classes while Nate snowboarded and helped him with his
Then we did our homework together. Mutually at the kitchen table.
After she'd done it.
Yeah, and she got a bunch of A's and I got a few B's, and we both have the same degree to this day.
Yep.
What did you get your degree in?
Business marketing.
Business
Minor
marketing.
in communications.
So while you're in high school, while you're in college up in NAU, you had a traumatic experience, which I think, well, I know because you've told me this, it's kind of forged a little bit of the path of who you are today and what you do. So let's talk a little bit about that.
So it was just about 20 years ago to the day that Kelly and I were up at NAU. We had actually taken a trip up to Montana, flew into Spokane, Washington with her parents, rented an RV, drove across the entire state of Idaho into Montana, Had just gotten there and got a phone call at the lobby check-in of this ranch place we were headed to. It was my dad on the other line letting me know that my best friend from growing up had just been in a traumatic car accident right here at Hayden and Chaparral in Scottsdale. He was still alive, but on life support, and they already knew he wasn't going to make it. And the real tragedy of it was that he had an older brother who had been killed in a car accident 2 years prior.
Wow.
So this was a family of 5 kids I was very close to throughout my entire life, and it sucked and still does to this day to watch that family lose 2 kids in 2 different car accidents within a 2-year time period. So we got back into the RV, drove another 8 hours back to where we came from, got to Spokane, Washington, just as the last flight was leaving down here to Phoenix. So we ended up sleeping in the RV in a Walmart parking lot as I had just gotten this news. Chokes me up to this day. And flew home the next day. Overnight, his parents and the doctors and the powers that be had decided it was time to pull the plug, as they say. And it was 20 years ago now. It's hard to believe.
So you were a junior in college?
Yeah. And oh, by the way, that was about 3 weeks after 9/11. So if you remember what our entire country was going through, right. It was actually a sequence of 3 events. 9/11 happened. Then the Diamondbacks win the World Series and beat the Yankees. I was fortunate enough to go to one of those games. And then 2 weeks after that, he passes away in a car accident.
So how did that affect you going back to school? Were you...
Terrible. It was awful. Class sucks. He's who I grew up snowboarding with, speaking of snowboarding. I grew up as a skier. Coming from Colorado, my whole family skied. Most of them still do, up in Winter Park to this day. So I had grown up skiing, just got used to it. Then my parents move us out here and say, you can't ski anymore, but you'll have a pool in the backyard. Hated it at first, but then learned to swim, obviously. And his name was JJ, and he immediately, when he realized I was a skier, this is when snowboarding was just getting popular. Yeah. And he said, you got to learn to snowboard. So his mom, Dee Dee, took us up to Snowball. Was nothing like what it is today, but learned to snowboard. And true story, I have never put on skis since. And I even worked at Snowball for all 4 years going to school up there in the rental shop, which is something I don't recommend to anybody to do.
Any of those kids that are listening right now?
You'll be spooked by stinky feet and boots for the rest of your life. But we had every pair of demo skis and everything at our disposal. They actually would want us to try them out, to be able to talk about them to the renters. And I just have never put on skis since.
So what kind of guy was JJ?
He was so I can really say this now, looking back. He was a connector. He was a natural connector. He was a relationship builder. And he was a good-looking, dynamic, outgoing personality, a good athlete. I was a bit of an athlete, but he was a better athlete than I was. Very hungry. He had what I see now in kids in youth baseball, especially the eye of the tiger. He had the eye of the tiger for everything he did.
Yeah. For
sports, for relationships, for friendships. He was the youngest of 5 kids. I'm the oldest of 3. And so we kind of offset each other in that way. And so I now, looking back, realize what I had been doing all throughout adolescence was I pretty much hooked my hip to him. And he was an entertainer. He gathered groups of people, kind of following in suit the way his older siblings did. And they took a really good care of all of us too. Let us tag along, for the high school parties. We'd be the only freshmen at the senior party. And then his older sister ended up going to ASU while we were still at Horizon. She, would take us to the tailgate parties when ASU was really good with Pat Tillman and Jake Plummer. And so he was a natural connector. I didn't realize it nor appreciate it back then, consciously, but I paid enough attention and I tagged along enough that I think it had a huge impact on me to this day.
So you had a very similar sort of situation as I did. So your dad was running a BNI down here.
Correct.
And you were like, I'm not going to go do that.
Did not see myself in the family business.
So my dad was in pharmaceuticals, and I said, I would never do that. I ended up doing that.
Yeah,
right?
Me too.
Yeah. So when you're coming out of school, what was your thought? Oh, crap, I need to get a job. And you knew that you had this business kind of waiting here. So when did you go, okay, fine, Dad, I'm going to do this? And give a little story about when your dad got, how long your dad's been doing it.
So I graduated from NAU in 2004. So to put this in context, real estate was just taking off, as you remember. Phoenix and the metro area were just bursting at the seams, 2004, 2005. So go back to when my parents moved here in mid-'80s. I'm a little kid. My dad first owned a paging business. I don't know if all of your listeners are old enough to know what, or even Trey
was
over
he
here.
JJ?
No, he
The
was
King
not
of Beepers?
JJ. But no, he
What's a different
he ran
JJ?
in that space. Yeah, different JJ. And he sold beepers out of our garage. We had these racks and racks of beepers before brick phones even came out. And he wanted to grow that. He didn't know anybody here in town. My parents didn't really know anybody in general here. So he started networking, going to chamber meetings, Kiwanis, community events, came across the concept of BNI, which was started in Southern California about a year prior. And my dad just wanted to grow his business. It's a really great, too long to tell organic story of wanting to grow a paging business, getting involved in networking, realizing real quickly he was much more passionate about networking and helping people grow their businesses. So I grew up around it. So to answer your question, I did not think I wanted to be a networker my whole life. I did not see myself doing this. In addition to working at Snowbowl during the winters up in Flagstaff, I worked at a private country club called Forest Highlands and cleaned golf clubs.
As I did as well.
Valet, we have a lot of similarities in that regard. Valeted cars at night to make tips, cleaned golf clubs during the day, got to play some free golf. I thought when I graduated I wanted to work in golf or hospitality in some way, shape, or form. But that just didn't really pan out. But I remember thinking about it as Kelly and I graduated in May of 2004. She knew she was going to go into real estate. She dabbled in a family real estate business right out of school. And I remember thinking to myself, no matter what I'm going to do in my life, if I can learn how to network and build relationships and help people build their businesses, it will help me. And now looking back, that was probably one of the smartest moves in my career because it's all I do. It's full time. It's what gets me out of bed every day. It's my passion. And it's a lot of fun along the way. It's how I know you.
Yep. So I just learned something new. I didn't realize your dad had gotten into it when it was basically brand new, starting in Southern California. Because how big is it now?
BNI is now in 70 countries on every populated continent. We have more than 10,000 chapters, as we call them, or groups, as some networking organizations. More than 280,000 members around the world.
That's nuts. So it
started with 4. Story goes that there were 4 people at the very first meeting.
And what year was that?
86. So we're going on our 37th anniversary. And 4 people who just wanted to help each other and grow each other's businesses. And now we're the world's largest business networking organization.
So I think that there's some negative connotation sometimes about a BNI chapter too, or just BNI in general, right? And usually those come from people that don't want to do the work. They don't want to show up every week. They're like, oh, it's too much work. Well, it's only an hour and a half once a week, besides the drive there and the drive home. And the definition basically is like there's a different person in every chapter from a different industry, right? So it's very difficult to get in there from a real estate standpoint unless you start your own. But if you're in one, it's definitely something that can drive your business and help your business grow. And there's people that are in this. This is not supposed to be a BNI thing, but I'm going to say it anyways. I mean, Austin's been in one for like 9 years. Yeah. Right? He did almost $200 million in business last year. He still goes to his BNI chapter to get those whatever 2 or 3 deals a month. But for everybody who's starting their business, I mean, that's really, really a great thing to do because it catapults you. And everybody in the group is set. They're in there to help each other out to grow a business. But the relationship side of things is a huge part, right? And so you and I, so I was in a chapter. Eventually, I left the chapter because you and I were going to start something different. And that was more of like an elevated level of a BNI chapter. But it was really just a bunch of friends. So we're getting back to the whole connecting and then the relationships and the networking, whatever. We basically just said, like, we wanted to handpick everybody that were in the group. We don't really want to deal with, like, everybody.
You're not supposed to tell anybody this part, but yes.
Okay. So, well, you weren't in it yet.
Well, that too.
You got hand-selected.
Yeah.
I must have.
So I hand-selected it. So, I mean, after that, the other one we did, when me and Chris Matarazzo and Alex Kinley and a few others, Ted Lyles, we did our own. We had handpicked a bunch of people, and to this day, so now we're in another group. There's 16 members, and it's called Junta, which is a really cool story as well. Benjamin Franklin started Junta. Look it up. So, anyways, the relationships that we built in there, everybody's done business. And we had a meeting this morning, and I was looking around because I knew we were doing this. I've done a deal with 15 out of the 16 guys in there.
Wow, that's amazing.
Isn't that crazy? And I've given business to 13 out of the 16 guys in there. And I've given some of the guys tons of business. I mean, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of business. And it really comes down to just us being friends with each other, right? And trusting each other and understanding that, like, we're going to help each other out. And that's why we did this. But so let's move forward a little bit from there, because I think we want to get into a little bit of about your personal life and just kind of even just go a little further in what we're doing here. But
let me mention one thing. So you talked about some people don't want to network. Right?
Yeah.
You said something about that. And I come across that a lot. And I think it's valuable for anybody listening. I wish I could really broadcast this to the masses. Yes, it is work, right? To network is work. I mean, the final 4 letters of the word network are WORK. But I think the stigmatism is that people who look at networking as a task don't enjoy it. They don't benefit from it. They don't share it. They don't end up with relationships like ours because of networking. Versus, I think something you and I have done naturally, and obviously everybody in this room does, is when you look at networking as an opportunity to build relationships, to forge connections. Even though it's kind of a crapshoot, you never know what you're going to get, right? People are people, and it takes time to realize what you've gotten yourself into or who you've met. If you look at networking less as work, even though it does take work, and more as an opportunity, as a connection, as almost like a fortune cookie that you don't know what you're going to get out of it, then it can change the world. And that's what Benjamin Franklin did. I think that's why this country exists. That's why huge companies like Apple were born. And so it took me time to realize that. And teaching that helped me learn that. And obviously you're a natural, and most of the people in this building obviously get this. But I think we're the minority, not the majority, because I think you're right. The majority of business people think networking is work and a task, and don't look at it, as a glass half full versus the other way around.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah,
you may.
So I think that it might be a little bit more daunting for people who identify as introverts. Do you have any recommendations for how, networking opportunities can be less scary?
Yes. So believe it or not, I have a lot of introvert in me. My wife, Kelly, I would say is even more of a natural introvert. Yet something she and I do together and help each other with, and I've learned along the way, kind of like I did with JJ in the early days, is pair yourself with somebody who's more of an extrovert. And so instead of going out networking alone to a chamber function, or even if at your kid's Little League game or a family barbecue, instead of going it alone, which is kind of like human nature, I'm just going to figure this out, connect yourself with somebody who's got more of an extrovert personality and let them lead the way. And naturally, you'll become more extroverted. That's something I have certainly done.
That's great advice.
Great question.
I think that if you're trying to build a business to do belly to belly, so to speak, as opposed to picking up phone and making cold calls, you have to weigh the options there and decide how are you gonna do this. You're either gonna fail if you don't do either, but going and talking to people and sitting down in a room where probably 50% of them are introverts. I mean, you go back and look at the people in the room, not everybody was. I mean,
even this morning.
The CPAs, the attorneys, those guys weren't necessarily people that were out there banging on doors to do that. But it's funny, I think about Fletcher, right? Mike Fletcher, who's our attorney.
Outstanding attorney.
He's a real estate attorney. I would say 95% of his business as an attorney comes from referrals and friendships and golf and stuff that he makes. I never would have ever thought that was how attorneys got business, right? Your younger years, you just think, who knows how you get them.
Go to school.
But that guy's working constantly, and part of work is networking.
Relationships, yeah. And he's great at it. And so you've known him longer than I have, but just as that example, first couple interactions I had, I would have never guessed he is the amazing networker and connector, let alone attorney that he is. So another lesson, this kind of goes back to your question, don't judge a book by its cover. I mean, we've all heard that our whole lives. But when it comes to people and networking and opportunities, some of the people who've had the biggest impacts on my life are ones that I would have never guessed at first glance, or that I might have even avoided meeting, but somehow, happenstance, they found me and I found them.
Even Trey. Trey's more, he's a little introverted, but put Trey in a social situation with people that are wise or people that want to have a good conversation, you would never know that he was an introvert. And my son's Aiden's the same way.
They've got good social skills.
Good social skills.
But they be possibly, I don't want to speak for you, Trey. You might be wiped out after an event, though. Like, right? This is draining. He's enjoying it while he's there, but then he's like, oh.
But Trey, do you get wiped out sitting behind a computer screen for 6 hours?
Sometimes. I mean, not always. But
That doesn't wipe you out?
I mean, yeah. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on what I'm doing at the end of
This
the day.
This isn't about Trey, but
I love Trey. The way that you worked your magic as this was all starting was phenomenal.
Yeah, we would not be recording right now,
Yeah.
or at least not.
Trey went to Toronto Film School.
Awesome.
So Trey's
He's obviously
gifted
good
and
at
all
what
this
he
sort of
does.
stuff. So this is,
He makes you look good on all these videos,
Yeah.
let me say.
Well.
So keep doing what you're doing.
Well, thanks, mate. I know this already. So let's move forward a little bit. Then let's talk about I want to talk about your son, JJ. Okay, because I've always loved these. Nate's got a lot of good stories. Obviously, I've memorized them all because I've heard them so many times. But when JJ was born, I like this part because JJ. So when he was 2, he had to start wearing glasses. Again, my kids had to start wearing glasses at a very young age. That can also be traumatic for a father, their son.
First son.
Yeah, you're like, oh my God, he's wearing bottle cap glasses. And, he's also, but now obviously he's like one of the best pitchers for his age group in all of Arizona, if not the region. And then he also had other issues that I'll let you tell the story because I feel like I'm telling your life story here.
You're doing a great job. You're hired, by the way. So
pay
you mentioned
attention.
the name. Okay, so, and again, it does, I think about it every day, but I don't tell the story as often as you're making it seem like I do, but I'm glad you're listening. So,
Well, I've known you long enough.
Yeah, that's what a decade will do. So Kelly and I graduate from NAU. I get involved in BNI and networking. She gets involved in real estate. The market's growing like crazy. We're riding the wave. We buy our first home, and everything's great. She comes home one day and says, I don't feel too great. I think I'm pregnant, which we had planned on having kids, but it wasn't like pre-scheduled or anything. And the market crashes. Like from what I can recall in my brain, it was almost like a matter of days in any order. I haven't researched it to remember exactly, but she's killing it in real estate. BNI is growing and taking off throughout the entire state and around the world. The mid-2000s were really the biggest growth period of BNI worldwide. We were just entering a new country, it felt like every other month, and we all share with each other and benefit from that. And so wave is just riding, right? As a young 20-year-old making money like we didn't know what to do with. And she says, great news, I'm pregnant. And I agreed, great news. Market crashes, like, woe is me. We had started investing in the market. That got hit hard. My grandparents, who had recently retired, invested a lot of money in the stock market and in real estate, got hit hard. And so now we've got this kid on the way. And what I didn't mention earlier was that when JJ passed away in the car accident, prior to that, and I haven't told this story publicly in too many places, so here goes it. After his older brother had died, we were together before his 21st birthday. We had a conversation that, from what I recall, went something like, if anything ever happens to one another, we'll get a tattoo of each other's initials on our body. And as a young, dumb 20-year-old kid who had just watched his older brother die in a car accident and thinks there's no chance this would happen to two of them, so yeah, sure, great idea. Needless to say, it hasn't happened. I've been scared to death of needles my entire life. I like tattoos. I admire tattoos. I've thought about getting one before this and since, but I've been afraid that if I start one, I won't finish it, and I don't want to have half a tattoo on me. So we had this conversation. Literally within a month or two, he passes away from a car accident. So I've got this guilty conscience of I had a conversation with this guy. We agreed that we'd get a tattoo. He had already had a few tattoos of his own, by the way, so he had a head start down this road. And he passes away. And at first I thought about it a lot. I even drew some out, and I went to we were on vacation in San Diego one summer, I remember. I actually went in a tattoo shop, kind of started the conversation. If I remember correctly, we had been drinking on the beach all day. The tattoo artist saved me by saying, you can't really do that after drinking on the beach all day. Come back another time, and I never went back. And so I lived with that for a period of 6 years. And then enter the story. Kelly's pregnant. And she starts coming up with names. She bought a book, and she's thinking about names. We didn't know the sex yet. And I remember we go to a doctor's appointment, and it was the one to find out what the sex was. And it had never dawned on me. She'll attest to this. We had never discussed it. I had a little Acura TL car I would race around this town in to meetings. And we were on our way to her doctor in it, and she says, we're going to find out the sex. I said yes. And I just blurt out of nowhere, if they tell us it's a boy, I get to pick the name. And she goes, what are you talking about? Like, she had the book on her lap
Right.
as we're having this conversation. And I said, yeah. I said, and I don't care what it is, but his initials have to be JJ. And it literally like hit me on the road, you know, as I had all this regret for not having a tattoo on my body. You know, if it's a boy, we're naming him JJ. And I said, you can pick what it stands for. I don't care about that so much. Most people growing up didn't even know what my buddy JJ's initials stood for. He was Justin Jeffrey, for the record. And I said, you get to pick. And she's like, what? I get to pick? I said, literally, I don't care what it is as long as the initials are JJ. His full name is Jack Jordan. She decided. So then we're in the doctor's office and the gal goes, congratulations, you're having a boy. Do you have a name yet? And before Kelly could even speak, laying on the table, I said, yeah, it's JJ. And she said, what does that stand for? I said, I don't know, and I don't care. And it took a few weeks, if not a few months, that Kelly, with collaboration, like I was in on it, but she says, we're going to name him Jack Jordan. Very few people, even I would say some good friends of his. He's in 8th grade now. Like you said, plays baseball on a pretty competitive team with some really great buddies of his. And I bet if we surveyed them, I've never done this, I bet less than half of them even know what the JJ stands for. So you know, I still don't have the tattoo. I haven't ruled it out forever. I may be in a beach
Your
in
son's
San
name,
Diego.
I think,
Yeah,
is
so
probably
you
Sam.
went up to tattoo.
The idea was
firstborn.
he'll live a little longer.
Yeah.
Longer than I will. So yeah, that was the name thing.
So after he was born, obviously we got into the whole glass thing.
Oh
but
yes,
then,
car accident. Okay,
well,
so
no, he had a heart issue first.
but we didn't know.
Oh, that's
okay.
right.
So fast forward, he's 5 years
really
old. We have a second son by the name of Ryder, who is equally as amazing and just as good a pitcher, by the way. He's 11. We also have a daughter who's now 7, and 3 kids are plenty for us. So JJ was 5, Ryder was 2. They were both perfectly healthy, had every well check at our pediatrician, who we thought was amazing. He was like the guy that was on the cover of the magazine
Phoenix
in town.
magazine.
I won't name names intentionally. And he was a good guy, and we thought he was a great doctor. And he had every well visit. This kid was healthy. He had been on airplanes a few different times. Kelly's family's from Illinois, so we had flown back and forth for high school graduations. He had done CrossFit classes. He had started playing T-ball already. Perfectly healthy kid, as far as we knew. On a Saturday morning in Scottsdale, not far from where we live now, in a different house we lived in at the time, I'm going through an intersection. We drove up. We had gotten Kelly a brand new Toyota Sequoia for Christmas. It was like the first nice vehicle we ever bought for her to have, a healthy, safe, big vehicle for our healthy family. And Saturday morning, she's sleeping in. Kind of a long story while I was leaving, but we get in the car. I bring the 2 boys with me. They're 5 and 2. Put them in their car seats right behind me. We get to the first intersection closest to our house, which is 64th Street and Thunderbird at the time. And 86-year-old woman runs a red light and T-bones us on the side, the passenger side of the Sequoia. Hit us so hard that when it flipped over, my side, my windows and my doors literally didn't touch the ground. So it must have lifted into the air, flipped over, landed on the roof, slid 30 feet, and came to a rest on a curb. I'm upside down. We're all buckled in, luckily. I'm holding on the steering wheel. So I remember vaguely seeing this car. She was in a Volvo sedan that saved her life as well. Quick plug for Volvos. And I'd always heard they were the safest car.
Yeah.
If I had a picture of this, you would be shocked that this
They're like
woman
tanks, right?
was alive after this deal. Yeah, her car literally stopped in the dead center of the intersection. She hit us so hard, it came to a stop. We flipped over and slid 30 feet. So I'm upside down, the car's still running. One thing I distinctly remember was only hearing one kid crying. So I know I've got 2 sons sitting behind me, 5 and 2. I'm holding on to the steering wheel. I'm upside down. The roof had buckled enough that it was touching my head, but it wasn't hurting me. Car's still running. The radio's on. There's like smoke coming out of the engine. All these airbags had gone off. I assumed we were still in the middle of the intersection. So I remember thinking, we need to get out of this vehicle before another car comes along and hits us. But I could only hear one kid crying. So the center console had lodged itself open. I turn around. I undo my seatbelt. I slam it closed. I look over, and there's the 2 boys. JJ is right in the middle seat in his car seat, hanging upside down with his glasses on. Never cried. And says, "What happened, Daddy?" 5-year-old. Ryder, who is 2, sitting to his left, directly behind me, is bawling hysterically within seconds of the accident. So now I'm thinking, does he have a spinal injury? What's going on here? I get them out of their seats. I go to open the back door to get out of the vehicle, and because the roof had buckled, I couldn't open it. I'm kicking it. I'm trying to get it out. Couldn't do so. Luckily, there were a few roofers who were on a house nearby doing a remodel. They saw this whole thing happen, saw that the vehicle was upside down, came down the ladder, ran over. They start prying the door open from the outside. I hand these two nice guys my two kids. We get out on the curb. I'm sitting there holding them. Ryder's bawling hysterically. JJ is like nothing ever happened. And an ambulance happened to be going through the intersection before any of us even called. Do you know all these parts of the story? Before we even had time to call 911, we're all in shock. And it was like a war zone. Like there were so many car pieces everywhere. Everybody naturally starts stopping. And an ambulance or fire truck, was going through the intersection, headed to another call, sees these two vehicles damaged, one upside down. They stop, literally as I'm sitting down with my two boys, just grateful that they're alive. Fireman runs out, a guy by the name of Kenny Overton, who ironically I had gone to elementary school with, hadn't seen or connected with him in like 15 or 20 years. Phoenix fireman at the time. We immediately recognize each other. I'm like in shock. And he looks down before I do and sees that my feet were in a puddle of blood. I was wearing flip-flops at the time. It was dead of summer that year. And he says, "You're losing a lot of blood. We need to get your feet taken care of. Hand over the kids to another paramedic, and I'm going to check out your feet." He says, "You're losing a lot of blood. I can't fix this right here." You know, he'd started putting on some bandages. He says, "We're calling an ambulance. We got to get you to the hospital." Great, you know. I borrow one of the side note. I borrow one of the roofer's phones and say, "I got to call my wife," right? Like she's still in bed. She thinks we're going to Home Depot. I call Kelly. She answers. I say, "Babe, don't freak out." And she
Famous
goes,
last
and I
words.
said, "We were just in a bad car accident. The Sequoia's upside down. We're sitting on the curb. We're fine." She jumps out of bed, goes and runs to the laundry room where there should have been keys to our other vehicle, but I had grabbed them too.
Oh.
So she's in our home by herself, knows that we're down the street far enough that she couldn't really walk immediately. So what does she do? She has no keys to start the only vehicle in the garage. She calls my mom, who lives pretty close by, and says, "Sandy, don't freak out, but the boys were just in a really bad car accident. I need you to come pick me up." So by now, a ambulance shows up. They're treating the woman as well. And Kenny says, "We got to take you to the hospital. You're losing too much blood. We got to do an MRI, see what's going on." He says, your insurance is going to pay for an ambulance ride either way. We might as well bring the boys anyhow. They had calmed down by now. Mm-hmm. They had some minor bruises, but nothing major. We get to Scottsdale Healthcare. I go in one direction to have my feet checked out. Kelly meets us there with my mother, who is like bawling and frantic, as you can imagine, her two grandbabies. And they go into another room, and a nurse who was just doing her job, even though my boys had calmed down and weren't injured, puts a stethoscope on my son right in front of Kelly and says, "What's wrong with his heart?" And Kelly said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "It has nothing to do with the car accident, but I hear something that I shouldn't hear. Has he had his heart checked out?" She's like, "Yeah, we got the best pediatrician in town. He's a healthy kid. He's done CrossFit. He's played Little League. He's great. What are you talking about? And like, where's my husband? Is he going to live?"
Yeah.
I get 26 stitches in my feet, few broken bones, crutches, pain pills, the whole nine. They send us home that night. We go to the pediatrician on Tuesday. It was Memorial Day weekend, so they were closed on Monday. We go on Tuesday, and pediatrician flips through the chart and says, "No, he's a healthy kid. We've checked him out his whole life. I don't see anything in the notes here. What was she talking about?" He's all jovial, like grateful that we're alive. We had told him about the car accident. I'm on crutches. And then he puts a stethoscope on my kid and says, "She was right. I hear something too. I don't know how we ever missed this." So from Saturday to this car accident to Tuesday in the pediatrician's office. And he says, and worse yet, I can't diagnose this. Like, you need to go to a pediatric cardiologist. Little did I know that such a thing exists. And he says, "I know a few. I'll get you in." We call a few. They're like, "The soonest we can get you in is Friday. This is Tuesday afternoon." I'm like, no. We just were in this car accident. This is my kid, my firstborn. What is up with his heart? Like, we end up getting in the next day at a off-site office for Phoenix Children's Hospital. My son's pediatric cardiologist to this day is a guy named Chris Lindblade. I highly recommend him if anybody ever has to go down this road. And he said, so they do a full EKG, and he was all jovial at the beginning. He's like, "He's a healthy kid. It can't be that bad. You know, sorry about your car accident." First day we meet him. Go down the hallway. We do an EKG. He comes back in with stone cold look on his face and says, "I got good news and bad news. I said, what is it? He said, the bad news is your son was born with a heart defect that somehow was never caught. It's called ASD.
Atrial septal defect.
Defect. You're familiar.
Madrid has the same thing, our middle child. It's a very similar story. We'll have to share after the
Small world.
episode.
That gives me chills.
Yeah.
So he says, that's the bad news. I go, what's the good news? He says, we can fix it with open heart surgery at Phoenix Children's Hospital. How's your schedule look? He was in kindergarten at the time. A kindergartner's heart, as they described it to me, is a little smaller than my fist. He says, your son has a 34 millimeter hole in the center of his heart, which is about the size of a quarter. And that means he has the heart of a 10-year-old, even though he's only 5, because his entire life his heart has been working double time where the wall in the middle of it regulates oxygen and blood flow. And he says, we can fix it. There's 3 surgeons in this state that do such a thing. They're all at PCH. 2 were at PCH. 1 was at Banner. We interviewed and met them all. And not too long after that, you show up at Phoenix Children's Hospital 5 in the morning with a 5-year-old. It was supposed to be about a 4.5 to 5 hour surgery. It was 5.5 hours. That felt like 5.5 days. And they finally come out and say, good news, surgery's done. It's fixed. It's an interesting process, how they fix this type of thing. I won't describe it here. But they did so. He wakes up a few hours later. Now he's 13, going to his first middle school dance with his girlfriend this Friday night. He's a club ball player. We get an EKG once a year, and it's, knock on wood, been perfectly fine ever since. So the irony is my best friend JJ was, from my whole life, was killed in a car accident. And arguably, had it not been for a car accident with my son JJ, who I had named after my best friend, we may have never caught this. And when you hear about high school kids who go out and like fall over dead on the basketball court, it's usually because they've got this same condition. They mask it their whole life. Then they get out there on the basketball court and all the fans are cheering and mom and dad are in the stands. And it's a form of a heart attack, but it's like your heart literally explodes. And
do you remember who your surgeon was?
Absolutely. Dr. Velez. If you are listening, I thank and praise you to this day, Phoenix Children's Hospital. As far as I know, he's still there.
All right. Different medical professionals, but same great outcome.
Chris Lindblade and Dr. Velez.
We love Phoenix Children's.
Me too.
They've saved 2 of my kids' lives. So, yeah.
We love you, PCH. Mm-hmm. We since have gone back there and volunteered. So you haven't gotten to it. I assume you're going to. Ryan and I do a lot of community stuff as well, too, which has a huge place in my heart because it's networking, it's relationship building, it's connecting, it's everything I've talked about. If any of you all out there are ever looking for a place to volunteer your time or donate money, PCH always needs and will take all the help they can get. So our family has gone back multiple years around the holidays. JJ has sat at a table like this one with a bunch of other former patients and made loom bracelets for hours on ends that ends up going to kids there. We've donated money to them. We've been to some of their events, and we are very grateful for PCH.
I always say if I ever win the lottery, they're getting a big chunk of money from me.
Do the same.
Oh.
So let's get into the other part of the story that I think's really cool, and it also brings it back to the networking part and relationship part. Your healthcare, right?
Our health insurance agent, Matt Gardner, mutual friend of ours, a member of Junto.
Yeah.
So I had only met Matt a few years prior to that. We were fellow members in a BNI chapter, even though we're almost the exact same age. He went to St. Mary's High School. I went to Horizon. We were kind of rivals back then. Although who knows, we were probably at a party together once or twice. And he had joined BNI in a group that I belonged to at the time. I don't even remember who Kelly and I had been using. We had healthcare insurance, I assume. But I meet with Matt, and he gives us a plan. Business owners, nobody is taking care of our health insurance. We had kids by now, so we needed good health insurance. We sit down with Matt Gardner. He gives us a plan. That was about 2 months before the car accident.
Holy cow.
So we get full medical care. He set us up with the right plan. I barely knew the guy, but I totally trusted him. And in essence, we said, without saying it, if anything ever happens to us, we don't want to go broke.
Yeah.
It was about $150,000 open heart surgery after we saw all the different invoices and follow-up. So had known him for a few months, set up with the policy. We start building a relationship. It had to be 3 or 4 years. So this all happened 3 or 4 years before the car accident. Matt and I are in this group. I get to know his wife. He started having kids about the same time. And we just would renew our plan each year, right? Like, we got health insurance, I got a little card in my pocket, we're good. Well, once we found out about the car accident, and this is another reason I love networking so much, like, my network was there for us. And like, I've heard of people say things like, something happened in my life and I felt like I was on an island. Well, that right there tells me you didn't have a network. Like we all need, in my opinion, I'm biased, but we all need networks no matter what. Yet like a lot of introverts think I can be fine without it. I think we all need them. So Matt was a member of my network. So he says to me, a lot of people said, is there anything we can do for you? And I don't, what do you say? You're not the one fixing my kid's heart. So yeah, thanks for your support. We're big Cardinal fans. You know that. I know you're a Cardinal fan. This was in the heart of Larry Fitzgerald's career, his prime. And and my kids are big Cardinal fans. They've grown up going to games. I just sarcastically say to Matt, I probably said it to a bunch of people. Yeah, I hear that celebrities go to PCH all the time to cheer up kids. If you could send Larry Fitzgerald to Phoenix Children's Hospital, my kid would really love it. Ha ha ha. Surgery happens. It's not more than 6 hours afterwards. And I don't know if we had posted it on Facebook or texted a few key people and said, he's out of surgery. He still had quite a recovery. He had a tube, the size of this in his throat. He had another one going into his belly. They're still feeding him medication. He's like half stoned the whole time, 5-year-old that wants to get up and run around, yet he's planted in this bed. It was the day of the surgery, maybe 5 or 6 hours after. Some family had come down to the hospital. Flowers, people bring flowers and balloons and stuff. And Matt walks through the door with this glass box this big, and in it is a signed Larry Fitzgerald helmet. And he walks into my kid, who's still out of it, and says, "This is for you to cheer you up, little guy." And to this day, JJ swears it's his signed Larry Fitzgerald helmet, but it is on my desk in my office, just for the record. Yeah. So power of networking. I mean, and it cheered us up. And Matt and I are great friends to this day. We do we share a suite at the Phoenix Open together every year. Like if that isn't bonding, I don't know what else is. And our wives are friends. Our kids are friends. Our kids have played baseball against each other, with each other. And it was a pivotal point in our relationship. And then I'm who told him about you and Junto. And now you guys are just as good of friends as well.
And another cool part about that is when we were in Flagstaff at that retreat, you said, how many people do you think I've given, or how much business do you think I've given you? Like individuals. And Matt's like, thousands. Like literally thousands of people that you've given him business to just by the relationships. Obviously, he does a really good job.
So he still does all my health insurance, but now he also insures my parents, my in-laws, my siblings, my neighbors, my cousins, like every direct referral that I know, but through BNI and introductions to people like you. Yeah,
we just sent him all our information here as well to kind of do.
He's really good at what he does.
Do an analysis on us to see where we're at and see if we can save some money because insurance is very expensive,
but very important.
Yep.
Like we would have been wiped out. So Kelly and I didn't have money. We had just started our careers. We had bought our own first house, but like we were totally leveraged on it. Had we not had the proper health insurance, either we would have had to face the decision, do you do this surgery, or we'd have gone bankrupt to save our kid's life. But we...
Trish, you got a question over here?
Yes, I think it's time for a rapid fire question.
I've seen these before. Go ahead.
All right. This is one of our favorite questions. What is your favorite word other than networking or relationships?
Those are definitely in the top 5 or top 10, but it's the word outstanding. And I just love the word, but it was a really successful gentleman that had an impact on me many, many years ago. Family friend, but he was much older than me, very successful Canadian guy. And when we would hang out and go to brunch or hang out with anybody, anytime somebody would ask him how he was doing, he would always say the word outstanding. And I picked up on this. So I don't know if it was a month or a year into knowing him, I said, why do you say that? What do most people say? Good or great or fine? And he said... his name was Richard. He said something to the effect of, Nate, my goal is to stand out in everything I do. So if people ask me, and he's an entrepreneur, businessman, dynamic, in the health, in a health product world, he said, if I can lead somebody at first interaction to believe that I stand out, or I at least want to stand out, it will had a huge impact on me. I would say 9 out of 10 times that people ask me how I'm doing, even on my bad days. It's just kind of natural form for me that I spit out the word outstanding.
So it sets the tone too. When people say, "Oh, fine," then you just kind of like move past it. Outstanding probably
most people like perk up.
Yes,
and I've had people say like, "Why?"
Or to ask why.
Really?
Yeah.
What where'd you get a butterfly today? Like, yeah, and it's a conversation starter.
Right.
And so, yeah, I like the word outstanding.
Cool. Thank you.
So we like to keep these right around an hour, but I think we just, before we like shut it down here.
We're at 44.
Okay, so before we do that, I want to talk just a little bit about your business and kind of where you guys see yourself going and like what the deal is, because we've had these conversations a little bit, and it's like you've now got 2 different franchises, so to speak, right? There's a retirement someday, but you're still very young. And then a little bit about just like what people can do to get involved in it, if you don't mind. Just a little plug.
I don't mind. And really, to me, the plug is more for networking in general. I'm a firm believer that any networking is better than no networking. If you are a business professional, if you're in sales, if you are employed or starting a nonprofit, I think this applies to PTAs, to little leagues, to churches, really to everything, which is part of what I love about what I do. I feel like any networking is better than no networking. And especially right now, with what we've all been through in the last couple of years and getting locked up at home and kids home from school and quarantining and the environment we're still in. So quite frankly, I don't care if people network with BNI or not, or Junto or whatever they do, as long as you're doing some networking. So really, the plug is for networking. I think the power of networking can get you to where you want to be. It can make your life a lot of fun and a lot better. If you were so inclined to be interested in BNI, because I forget how you worded it earlier. What we say is we're an exclusive network. So we allow one person per profession in each chapter. We have about 1,800 members here in the Valley of the Sun and a few up in northern Arizona. About 80 different chapters, like the one that you first joined and one that I belong to. The catch with being one person per profession is that every single BNI chapter around the world has a residential real estate agent, a mortgage lender, a property and casualty insurance agent, and a financial advisor. Those are like the 4 categories that I guess just must need to network the most all around the world. So when those spots get filled in a chapter, usually it's the people who started it, they never get opened up. And so that is what leads to us starting new chapters. Well, luckily for us, the real estate market and the mortgage world are so hot right now in this town and throughout a lot of the country and the world, that we're hot and we're growing. We're in growth mode, to answer your question. We want to help as many people as possible, and the more chapters we have and the more members that we have that are referring business to each other and building relationships and getting to know each other's families and leading to groups like Junto or mastermind groups are great. And so we're looking to grow. I think right now is a great time because of the circumstances we've all been dealt in the last couple of years, which, I think we can agree really hit us all equally, regardless of what we all did back in March of 2020. Like we all got thrown the same curveball. So it's not, just us and them, it's everybody. I think the people and business people, young or seasoned, big or small, in cities like the Valley of the Sun or Flagstaff or, middle of nowhere, I think those of us that are leveraging our networks, our connections, our relationships, our knowledge, have an opportunity to really jump ahead of our competition and our peers who aren't doing it, which is a lot of people from what I'm seeing. And that's whether you're networking more online. That's important too. I know you do that. Here we are in this. This room's got to have more technology in it than I have ever known how to work in my 40 years on this planet. And so now, because of what happened, technology has gotten better and faster and smoother. Really, Zoom saved our business. So when March of 2020 hit, every one of our chapters around the world up until that point had only ever met in person, like exclusively. In rooms, like Orange Tree Golf Resort or that conference room. I wish I remember the name of the building that you and I first met, though, up by the Princess. It was a business building.
But it was just an
boardroom.
office.
Yeah. So, when it hit, we had no choice but to pivot, and it was really our corporate leadership who was far smarter than I am, a bunch of Harvard grads and MBAs and PhDs who said really quickly, if we want to continue to help our members grow their businesses by referral, especially as this pandemic thing was just hitting, we've got to figure out how. We converted more than 10,000 chapters in about 2 weeks' time that were very used to meeting in person, belly to belly, face to face, to doing it on Zoom while everybody was at home. And it worked. Luckily for all of us, it worked. And so now we have 2 models, 2 options, if you will. And so it's all the more reason. I just want people to get out there and network. We've got a little office in North Scottsdale. We've got a great team of people. I I appreciate all the kind words and everything that you and Matt do, but it's a team of way too many people for me to mention. Kelly's heavily involved, but you know a lot of them, like
The
Kristen and
directors,
Barbara.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it weren't for them. So reach out to us, bniarizona.com. You can email me at nate@bni.com. If I could do anything to help any friend of yours is a friend of mine, I'd be happy to, and let's all network together.
So let me just ask you this question real quick here. If a realtor came to you, let's just spin it on a mortgage person, came to you and said, I'm thinking about starting, or I want to do this, but I don't know, like, what do you guys do? I don't know if it's once a week. Like, how do you handle those objections? And so, because you're going to have people that are going to be listening to this are going to be like, ugh.
So I had this conversation with Rachel Drummond, a member of your team, about 3.5 years ago, who had a very successful career elsewhere, who wasn't, I think I can say, Rachel wasn't as interested in business networking as you and I had already been. But she showed a little interest. And I did have to say to her, like I said to you at one point with Kelly Henderson, with people in your industries, you can either go on a waiting list that nobody ever comes off of, or we can start a new group together. And we've got a model and a system that's not easy, but it works to do so. And I said that to Rachel. Now, 3 years later, she just stepped down from being the chapter president of her chapter for a year. She said this publicly. You're aware of this. It was the best year in her entire mortgage career. And so, I don't twist arms. But, if someone's willing to open a door for themselves, I'll do anything I can to help them, open it even more so.
Well, I've heard Ryan say countless times that BNI saved his mortgage career.
I've heard him say that too.
It really did, just because when you're getting started in anything, you think it might be easier than it is, but finding an angle to keep you afloat is a really good way of going about it. And BNI did that for me. And it really wasn't the real estate agent at all, to be honest with you. It was like everybody else in the group were sending me deals, sending me like their own personal stuff for their family and friends and stuff that was making it, doable for me to live. And eventually, it was getting quite a bit. And
the market came back. Like, that's another thing. You can utilize, and who knows what the future holds right now. Like, I seem to think I usually do. I have no clue right now what the next several years are going to look like for any of us in business or in real estate or in the values of our homes, our portfolios, et cetera. So you just made me think of something I almost mentioned earlier. Maybe this is a good way to wrap up, but I'll be here all day if you want. So our philosophy in BNI, the original group that got together in Southern California 36 and a half years ago, said to themselves, if we're going to do this every week, why are we going to do this? Why are we going to pay money for a membership to show up at the same place at the same time every week with people who don't do what we do and help them? And these original visionaries, if you will, said, let's come up with a philosophy. And they came up with 2 words, giver's gain, 2 words we all are familiar with. We were all taught as little kids to share and to give and everything. Well, now to me, I'm almost 20 years into this thing, giver's gain isn't just a philosophy for BNI, it's a philosophy for life. And I find, and you are a testimonial to this, having me here today is a great example of this. The more that any of us give to others first, with no expectation of anything in return, the more we gain second. So why not give more? But again, a lot of people don't do that. And they don't teach this stuff in school, even at NAU, with or without your wife or girlfriend at the time, helping you with your homework. I might have missed that day. If it was a powder day, I might have missed that day. So to me, that's what it's all about. The more that we can give to each other.
Reciprocity, right?
The law of reciprocity. What goes around comes around. It really does. I'm an example of it. I wouldn't be sitting in this chair with you today if that weren't the case. So
I went to Rachel's last meeting. Saw you there, Nate. I went there just basically to support her. It was a big deal to her. It was she was very proud of what she had accomplished in that year, and the group was amazing. I was blown away. I'd never been to a BNI meeting ever. I'd heard Ryan talk about it. I have several friends who were in them, but I could not believe how efficiently run, how incredibly informative, and I'd say the number one word that comes to mind when I think of that experience was generosity. Everybody was so excited to ask how they could help. And when I don't know exactly what you guys call it, when you go around the room and everybody does their whole this is what I've done this last week in terms of meetings and like referrals and all that stuff.
Referrals and testimonials.
I was just like, holy shit, this is amazing. Like nobody had nothing to say.
Yeah. And that's a
And there
group
was
of
like,
people.
I don't know how many people are in that room.
Probably 80 that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good
It's
day.
crazy.
You came on a good day. But they are all good days. When you're with people who are willing to give to each other first without expecting anything in return, it's just amazing what comes out of it. And that's what I love doing.
The last thing I'm going to say before we wrap this up is Junto doesn't work really without Nate because of the fact the structure. When you, like you said, structure.
Oh, yeah.
Structure is well, Jim Stevens, but he's also a very disciplined, structured guy. But it's just, that's why when people try to do it themselves, it doesn't really work. You kind of have to go into this because first of all, you need to pay because
Skin in the game.
You got to have skin in the game.
Skin in the game.
And you have to have structure and how things roll because if not, you're going to be there for way too long and it's not going to make any sense. So having Nate in the group, even though it's not a BNI chapter, it's the structure of it is about 50% of the way a BNI might go.
Yeah, we have an agenda.
Exactly.
We mastermind, but instead of doing it aimlessly, we do it with intention.
Yeah, exactly. So that is a huge help. That's not why we asked you to come in the group. But.
It's the least I could do.
All right. So anyways, thanks again for coming. Really appreciate Nate Dominguez with BNI Arizona.
Thank you, Ray.
Yep. BNI Arizona, BNI International.
Yep.
Both. Thanks, Trey. Thanks, Trish. Appreciate it. Everybody, we are a podcast that is on YouTube. So please go on there and like and subscribe, ring the bell so we can get so you can get some notifications knowing that we just released another episode. We are on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, Real Talk with Ryan Madrid. Please like and share, comment. We need more production. What is it? We need more engagement. Engagement. That's more the social media word I was looking for. We need more engagement. And then you can obviously listen to this if you don't want to watch it on Spotify, Google, Apple. Am I missing any? All of them. Wherever
you enjoy your podcast.
Wherever you enjoy your podcast. I actually heard that the other day, and I was thinking I needed to say that.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't.
That's what Trey's here for. But Trey said it for me. That's what Trey's here for.
Trey said it for me. Oh, hey, everybody else out there, please, if you're our friends, please help us. Watch this. We do really good stuff here. We have great interviews. We have great content. The production's like high level. And we need good people to be on here, and we need good people to watch it, and we need you to share with your friends. So if anything resonates on any of our episodes, share them with your friends. Send them to each other. Please, please, please. Because we want everybody to watch these because we think it's good content. So
I agree.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Friend. And please check out this episode and all the other ones. Thank you.
VIP Mortgage Incorporated does business in accordance with the Federal Fair Lending Laws, NMLS ID 145502. For state-specific licensing, please visit www.vipmtg.com/national-licenses/. VIP is not acting on behalf of or at the direction of the FHA, HUD, or the federal government. VIP is an equal housing lender.